Disney Pixar has tackled something new for them in their latest movie, Puberty. Despite being a kids' movie about the struggles of growing up, many Christians took the movie on surface level and called for believers to ban the movie in their homes. Is this reaction reasonable, or is this another red cups at Starbucks situation?
This week, we're talking about Turning Red, the good and bad of the movie, and the Christian social media reaction. Are you ready? It's time to wake up.
New day, yes it is.
Wakey, wakey.
Time to get up.
Good morning, citizens.
Up and at them.
Rise and shine.
This is your wake-up call, people.
Come on, the coffee's on.
We're going to get you guys circulating on Christian radio.
I understand young people. I know what's hip. I know what's on. I know what's lit. I know what's fleet.
What's up, my nerds?
Nerds!
I work with a bunch of nerds.
I'm a nerd, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Rise and shine, nerds.
You're tuned in to the Back Row Morning Show, proudly a part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. I'm Radio Matt, the station manager and a nerd culture missionary here at LTN. I'm a third-generation radio dude and a lifelong nerd.
And I'm Mo, sidekick to the chief radio nerd, here to bring the facts and fire to your day. Now, where is my coffee?
The Back Row Morning Show is a Monday through Thursday show on LTN Radio that covers a wide range of topics from all across church and pop culture, and we usually take a topic in three segments focusing on different aspects of our weekly discussion, and also some discussion with our Discord buds. You're listening to a compilation of the main topic segments from this past week's morning shows.
This week, we're looking at Turning Red and its backlash.
But before we jump into our discussions, Mo and I have a side venture called Back Row Games, home of several Christian tabletop games, including our two most popular, Judge Not and Sunday School Answers. Sunday School Answers is the original Christian knockoff of Cards Against Humanity. All the awkward fun without the need to bathe in bleach afterwards to get all the sin off.
We've got some big updates for you. Last month, we released the White Box, our largest expansion yet, with 266 new cards to add to your original game. And this week, we've released 3 new booster packs: the Music Pack, the Cool Youth Pastor Pack, and the Your Dumb Ideas Pack, which is a small pack of blank cards for you to write your own card ideas with inside jokes from your friends and your family.
So this month, we're once again teaming up with Love Thy Nerd and their community, our community, the community that we're in, to create a new supersized expansion deck, the Gamer Deck. You can be a part of it. Submit your white answer card ideas, and if they are picked to be in the pack, your name will be on the card forever. To submit your ideas, visit lovethynerd.com/SSA form. All one word.
You can check it all out and get your copy of Sunday School Answers at backrowgames.com.
This week, we're talking about Turning Red and some of the controversy around it. But today, we're just going to give our thoughts on the movie overall.
As is typical when we do a movie review week, we will be very spoilery. That is a word. So if you haven't seen it yet and don't want the movie spoiled, best to take a break for a bit and catch up with the podcast after you watch it.
So here's a quick synopsis of the movie. Set in Toronto circa 2003, Pixar's Turning Red centers on 13-year-old Mei-Lin Mei Lee, voiced by Rosalind Chiang.
Rosalie
Chiang?
Chiang?
A rule-following middle schooler who's the only child of her overprotective parents, type A Ming and Quiet Jin, who run a Buddhist temple in the city's Chinatown. May and her 3 best friends, Miriam, Priya, and Abby, and are infatuated with popular boy band Four Town, which has 5 members, and they make a reference to it in the movie, and it still didn't lessen the fact that it's ridiculous. And they crush on a local teen who works at a convenience store. One morning, after an unsettling dream about both real and celebrity boys, May wakes up transformed into a literal red panda. She finds out that the metamorphosis is an ancestral rite of passage for the women in her family when they reach puberty. but that a lunar ceremony can confine the panda into an amulet. Since strong emotions can bring on the transformation, May must call upon all her meditation skills to resist the change until the ceremony can take place. That works for a while until her friends convince her that changing into the panda could be fun and lucrative. So, Mo, let's just be generic for now. What are some of your initial thoughts about the movie, especially given that you have a daughter almost this age?
Yeah. Mila will be 11 in just a couple weeks. And so she's right there in the age range. And I've got to say, I didn't watch the movie with her, Chris did, but I did then re-watch the movie with Chris, and Chris was like, you realize this movie was written for your daughter, right?
Yeah.
She loved it, thought that it was absolutely awesome and brilliant, and there were so many aspects of the movie that she understood and got and just kind of fell right in line with. I think that she would probably be one of May's best friends, quite honestly. So, I did have a really difficult time deciphering, was this set when I was a teenager or is this current times? Because that just tells you like how much of today's generation
are falling back into some of our culture for back then.
The whole time I'm like, wait, hold up. They do that now. I see my fifth graders wearing these same things, saying these same things, giggling, girling over some of the same things that the girls do in the movie. Anyway, that probably was the hardest thing that I had to wrap my mind around was, wait, is this from when I was a teenager or is this now? I don't know. Anyway. That's my very generic.
That's your very generic
thoughts.
Okay, so there was a reviewer who got in trouble and had to like take down his review and apologize because part of his review was just complaining that this movie essentially had nothing really for guys to connect to, at least not a lot. That it's mostly geared towards women, and there's a lot of the Chinatown culture and the Buddhist culture in it.
Yeah, that
just like he couldn't connect to. And the reason he had to apologize and take it down is because people thought that this was a very like white-focused, male-focused, America-focused review, when in reality, they just should have given the review to somebody else. They shouldn't have published that review or given him the, if that's all he was going to come up with, given him the assignment of reviewing it. Which is what they eventually did. But again, coming from a white male American focused mindset, there wasn't a whole lot for me to connect to in this movie, but I didn't dislike it. And then there were a few things in this movie that we'll talk about that I did connect with, but more from a recovery and just like learning how to deal with emotions and struggles like that, and even just as a parent's perspective, things that I did connect with.
Yeah.
It might not have been directly aimed at me or my demographic, but that doesn't mean that I can't pull stuff out of it. In fact, I've always really said that about most media, especially media that maybe Christians are hesitant about.
Right.
Is that look hard enough, you'll find the messages that you want.
Yes.
You might also find messages in there that you don't like, but that doesn't mean you can't still pull some good out of it to use as an object lesson with your kids or whoever you're watching with. And so there were some stuff like that I was able to pull out that I enjoyed. But going into it, I didn't realize it was going to be set in the past. And so the first thing I noticed is like, none of these kids have phones.
Why didn't I figure that out? That was good.
It wasn't until I made that connection that I'm like, oh, okay, this is back with the boy band era, or at least on the tail end of it. Like, I get it now. And I read an interview with the writer, I don't know, who grew up in this area in Canada at this time.
Okay.
So it was based on her experience. But I did like the mystical elements of it. You know, the red panda thing being like a rite of passage, curse-esque kind of thing for the family now. It didn't start as a curse, but it kind of became a curse.
Yeah.
I like that whole, sci-fi nerdiness about it. And we'll get into like the things that, Christian's had a problem with here in the next couple of days, but I didn't really find it all that problematic. There were a couple things I didn't like.
Right.
That were just a little distasteful. Maybe it just could have been done a little differently.
Okay.
And it wouldn't have bugged me as much. But before we get into that, I'll ask you that question. What was your favorite or least favorite thing about the movie?
Okay. My favorite thing about the movie was just how spot on, coming from a girl's perspective, how spot on a lot of the emotions that are shown through May were portrayed.
Yeah.
I don't think that it has ever been done better or more eloquently than the way that this movie presented. Just like those puberty feeling moments of confusion and shame and awkwardness and change and
Sure.
I already said confusion, but anyway, my least favorite thing was the mom.
But you're supposed to kind of not like the mom at first. So it did its job.
Sure.
So my favorite thing about the movie was how it took the time to show how both the mother began to understand the daughter better and that the daughter began to understand the mother's life better too. And that culminated in, again, we're talking spoilers here, culminated in that weird panda realm they showed up in.
Right.
Where she sees her mom at her age crying about the same kind of stuff that she was crying about not being good enough, not feeling good enough, that, being ashamed for one reason or another. And then her grabbing her by the hand and walking her out of that, and how her mother, it showed like her mother aging as they're walking up into her real age. And that culminated in that kind of connection at the end where they just kind of understood each other. Like, yes, you're a young woman, you're growing up. I have to kind of get out of the way of that. At the same time saying, the daughter realizing, I understand, that not everything that you're doing is what you want to do, or that, you have the same feelings that I was a kid and you're just trying your best to guide me, and it might not be perfect, but I at least understand that the reason is because you care about me and you're trying.
Right.
Which, all we can ask for, really.
Right.
I don't know how Deidre and I are going to understand that part of our daughter's life when it comes, or how we're going to react. That kind of stuff is scary, thinking about it too. The thing that I hated about the movie was some of the choices of words. There is the scene where she's in full rebellion mode and she's yelling, I like boys. I like dancing. And then she says, I like gyrating. That word is one of those words that just give me the giblies, just the, ooh, no, because that word has too many connotations outside of dancing. 'Cause in this sense, she just meant dancing with her hips. That's what she meant.
Yeah.
But that word has so many sexual connotations.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I don't like a character this young saying that word. And we're supposed to be like empowered by it as an audience. I don't like it.
Yeah.
You could have chosen any other. Just say, I like dancing the way my friends dance. Just be generic about it, where we still understand what you're saying. You don't have to say gyrating.
And I can understand that. I can completely get that. I take, I don't know the word to use, but
Not gyrating.
No. I get very, very, very frustrated and, like you said,
Grossed
the
out,
giblies.
yeah.
But I don't even like using that word. That's like one of
Right,
those.
you don't like giblies either.
Whenever I hear in a movie or a television show, a kid say a cuss word, and it's supposed to be done in a comical way. I can't think of what was said, but the Will Ferrell movie he's the race car driver.
Talladega Nights.
And the kid with his mouth in that movie, it just every single time I will walk away from a movie so fast if a kid is talking.
I also know, they've also made it a trend lately to make that endearing when a kid cusses.
Yeah, no.
Like they did that in Endgame, where they had Robert Downey Jr.'s daughter, say the S word twice, and they made it like an endearing scene. And like, you can't say that. That's my word. That's mommy's word. Only she's allowed to say that. And she says it. She says it again. Can you get out of here? Like, why? Because I got some important S to do. Says it again from his daughter. It makes it this wholesome father-daughter moment. I'm like, but it's all based around using the S word. Like that's weird, right? You shouldn't be feeling all gooey about the daughter cussing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gross. And
I agree.
That's in too many things. I don't like movies that make kids cuss or make kids like talk about, gross sexual stuff. I understand this stuff actually does happen in the real world. I know plenty of stories of, elementary schools in our town of kids, saying all kinds of gross things and talking about sexual things that they don't understand, but they want people to think they do, and just some weird one-upsmanship that they're doing with all the other kids. It's disgusting there, and I don't want to encourage it in movies and TV shows.
Exactly. That could be like a whole other topic that we tackle one day, because I think that there's a very dangerous slippery slope that we put celebrity movie star kids in.
Sure.
When we put them in roles like that.
Yeah. I agree.
Anyway.
But either way, overall, what would you rate the movie? 1 to 10?
Probably 7.5.
Yeah, I'm about right there too. About a 7 or so. So those are our basic thoughts. Now tomorrow we're going to have our Discord have our Discord join us for a discussion of some of the more controversial moments of the movie.
We'll be back with more. Stick around.
Welcome back to the back row. I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Mo. And every week, these 4 main segments get spread out across 4 daily morning shows on LTN Radio. And they include a lot more content, including weird news, random facts, games, challenges, rants, junk food, and more. And you can be a part of all that by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/LTN on air, so you'll be notified when we go live. You can even be a part of the show.
And make sure you catch our full morning shows every Monday through Thursday on LTNonair.com at 8 a.m. Eastern with an encore at 10. All right, so we've been talking about Turning Red, the latest animated movie from Disney Pixar, and one of the few to not be rated G. And the Christian community has had some issues with the movie, raising a lot of controversial questions and some condemnations. So today we're going to talk about some of those with our friends from Discord. We've got Hillary, KY Redhead here, and we've got our buddy Tad. And you both have seen the movie, right? We've confirmed this.
I have not seen the movie.
You haven't seen the movie?
I've not.
But you wanted to jump in on this chat?
Well, certain aspects of the chat, because certain aspects of the chat interest me greatly.
Okay, so you're aware. You're aware of some of the things.
I am aware, yes.
Okay.
I am aware.
And
I
Mo
won't comment on things that require knowledge of the movie.
Okay. Well, Mo saw the movie at least as much as she stayed awake.
I saw as much of the movie as I see of most movies.
I watched the movie despite the fact that it was very difficult for a grown male to connect with some of it, but there's some stuff that I actually did connect with quite a lot. So essentially, this movie is roughly set in the early 2000s, 2003, 2004. And it is kind of a coming-of-age story. It's taking the story of basically a girl hitting puberty, but making it fantastical. Saying there's some sort of like a Buddhist family not necessarily curse, but it's kind of treated like a curse nowadays, where when you come of age, you let out an inner beast, a big red panda. And you have to learn to kind of tame the emotional red panda by keeping those emotions in check until they do like this weird ceremony where they can imprison the panda into some sort of amulet. It's a whole story. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole movie.
But it's essentially about, becoming a woman, kind of, for lack of a better term. So, and Tad, you're also a grown adult male.
You're also a woman
who watched this.
Yeah, but I work with kids,
Okay.
so I have a little bit of a unique perspective. So,
Well, what did you think of the movie, like, overall?
it didn't catch my attention all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah, but I love the nostalgia of the whole thing. That was just great. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the friends. The friends were they were dynamic.
Yeah, it was a good group.
Yes. It's Canada in Toronto with Chinatown, and my mom grew up 20 minutes away from Chinatown in Scarborough, surrounded by two Italian families when she grew up. So it really hit home type of thing just because of stories and stuff like that. So yeah, it was an enjoyable watch. Would I let someone younger than a teenage watch? Probably not.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the crux of all the issues, is that Disney might not have done a good enough job advertising that this is really a movie for kids of this age, like around the preteen to teenager age, not necessarily for younger kids. And I mean, it is PG, and so you kind of assume that you're expected to, number one, watch this under parental guidance, and number two, be a little bit older than the Y7 crowd. But they also did advertise it on like the Disney Junior page for a short while, on the Disney Plus app, which is not the target demographic for the story. So I get that bit of the backlash, but let's go through some of the things in the film that gave some people pause. Number one, they do talk about, in kind of hyperbolic terms, a girl having her period. I believe the wording used was, "Has the red peony bloomed?" That was the phrase they used when the mother was asking her, thinking that that's what that was, and then bringing her a bunch of sanitary napkins.
You can't even say the word?
That's what they wrote here on the page. And then there is a scene where, again, thinking that that's the thing, the mom is like at the school holding up a big box of pads and says the word pads. And so like parents were kind of uncomfortable. But again, I think thinking from a younger child's perspective that, they're talking about that. What? Yeah. I'm not a female.
I am so passionate about this topic. It's so hard not to.
Please.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Either
one of you.
It was okay. For my perspective, it was only like 10 minutes of the film.
If that, yeah.
They really focused on that, and like this whole like our girl's changing changing. But then it really didn't touch on that at all throughout the rest of the movie, except for the friends wanting to become a woman for going to this concert type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, you could skip those 10 minutes of the film and totally still be on track of what was going on in the film.
Right.
Like, you could cut it out and the film is still intact. So in that case, it wasn't that important.
Sure. And I guess the question would become, though, would it even be necessary to still be fine as a movie? Should we feel the need to cut it out? Like, should we feel the need to not be able to talk about that? Again, I'm not a lady, so I'd really like to see a lady's perspective from that.
That's fine.
Well, I haven't seen the movie, so Mo, I don't know if you want to go first because you have seen it, or if that matters for the context of this conversation.
Not really.
Weigh in your opinion, Hillary, and I'll piggyback off you because I'm fairly certain we're probably in agreement here. So.
Yeah, this is the whole reason why I was like, I have got to make time out of my day to be part of this conversation, because I am very passionate about education. For people who don't know me, I homeschool. I have always homeschooled. My degree is in education, which is useless for homeschooling. That's another story. And I have 3 boys. I only have 3 boys. I'm a boy mom. And I have 2 teenagers and a preschooler. And so I'm very, very passionate about making sure that they know things that they need to know in order to function in society. And I feel like part of that is knowing how to relate to women as friends, as coworkers, as potential future spouses, etc. They're going to be dads hopefully one day. And menstruation is it's part of life. I mean, that's part of our society. It's just something we experience, and that's just a normal part of life. And I really feel like it should not be taboo. I know it is, but my goal, at least for my family, is to make sure that the boys know, hey, you know what happens every month physiologically to women who experience this? Well, here's what happens, and this is why, they hurt, and this is why they feel like they can't wear their clothes, because here's what a uterus size normally looks like, and during menstruation it can swell up to this many times its size, and can you imagine trying to put your clothes on when that's happening, and how frustrating that would be? And just letting them know, what's happening to your friend if they have a broken arm, if they have appendicitis, you can sympathize with your friend who's going through that. You can advocate for them. You can treat them with respect and gentleness, and even, use your privilege as white middle-class males, which all of my children are, to stand up for and defend people who are not being treated well. And I mean, I grew up being teased. I'm sure every woman who has experienced menstruation or has been a woman around other people has experienced some sort of teasing or, a ha-ha, are you on your period kind of thing. And I just feel like if more men or even women knew what menstruation was, how it happened, what was actually happening in their body at the time, that they would not be as quick to make jokes. And so I think that information is important here. And I love that Turning Red has made this a talking point. I don't like the way that it was handled. I don't like the negative aspect of the way that it's being treated, but I do feel like this is an important, vital piece of knowledge that we are missing as a society when we have whole generations upon generations growing up of both men and women not knowing how an average or typical woman's body would work and develop and function in a healthy way. And so obviously I feel very passionate about that topic. So that
was good and very fast. I had
totally
several
agree.
jokes to throw in, and you were talking too fast for me to get it in.
She's not going to let you joke about this situation.
Tad, what were you saying?
I'm sorry, if part of your lining of one of your organs ripped out every month and horrified you, you'd probably be like, man, I wish someone would be nice to me and bring me a cookie. So,
I was just going to say, you're saying what's going on. You don't know what's going on in your body. I'm like, they're literally dying a little bit on the inside every month.
Yeah. And too many girls, like with Turning Red, I'm like, I have friends, and I'm sure Mo does too, who they grew up and their parents didn't know how to talk to them about it, so they just didn't. And then it just happened to them one day, and they thought they were going to die. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's so tragic, and it's unnecessary. And I really want to empower parents to have these hard conversations with their kids. Menstruation, sex, all these things that they're going to encounter in life as in part of normal life. And that way, hey, what if your cycle is irregular, you need to talk to your care provider about that. But if you don't know anything about it, how would you know?
Exactly.
And it's things like that. Like, you would want to know if your body was functioning normally or abnormally, and how to deal with that. And hey, you know what? That's not normal. I just found out a couple months ago I have ADHD, and it's explaining my last 43 years of existence. I'm like, wait, that's not normal? wait, that's not normal. My husband's like, babe, no, people don't do that. I'm like, but this is normal. He's like, no, that's not normal. And so, things like
never had the heart to tell you.
menstruation, where it's just taboo, and we don't even talk about, like, now ADHD I feel is kind of safe to talk about, but menstruation still, even for adults, is just a topic where like, oh, well, we can't talk about that. That's so embarrassing. I'm like, no, it's going to happen hundreds of times throughout your life. You can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Tad, what were you going to say there?
That I wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, and it's putting back, first of all, yeah, like KY was saying, and how the movie addresses it. Parents can be blindsided and react negatively or poorly, and so that it's a connection point for both the young teenager and the parents, because it's that, it's giving a thought into an influencing the parent, and oh wait, hold on, have I had this talk yet? And oh yeah, I should totally not react like that, because that looked wrong. And then for the teenage girl that's been in that situation, and the guys that were also put into that situation of, yeah, this is really awkward and embarrassing, and we need to respect each other a little bit more. So yeah, so I deal with kids from 5 to 11, and then I help out with our youth group. And so to see all of that change and that coming of age, but also just the change of independence and the change of perspective and thought, were all brought up in this movie and are all very important talking points. And how do you deal with other family members being involved with your own kid? How do you set proper boundaries with your own kid? Those were things that were conflict points in this movie. And honestly, parents, you need to stop getting your panties in a twist and actually step up and, yes, be the filter for these movies that are coming out, but not being afraid of these movies when they come out, and allow them to be education and talking points. So as a 26-year-old single male, I love my parents and I love my families. And so I say that out of serving you guys.
Well, what were your additional thoughts, if you had any? Or did KY cover it all?
KY did cover a lot of it. Go figure.
Took all the good talking points.
I will say, I went into watching this movie wanting to be positive about it. Chris and Mila watched the movie when it first came out. Mila had been really looking forward to watching it. And I don't even remember what movie it was, several months ago. I think it was a new Netflix Christmas movie that came out that they watched one Friday night while we are recording. And I come home and Mila's all telling me, Mom, we watched this movie. And I was like, what? We were supposed to watch that as a family. Well, then the previews for Turning Red comes out and Chris is like, well, you probably want to ask your mom if she wants to watch it with you so we don't take it away. But I ended up saying, no, it's fine. You guys watch it. So one Friday night while we were recording, when it first came out, they watched it, the two of them together. And then I'm seeing all these posts all over Facebook about how we shouldn't be watching it and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And so I asked Chris, hey, do you agree with, all of these points that these people are making? And he's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. He said, yeah, I can see where there is some underlying truth to some of the points that are being made, but overall the warnings and the you shouldn't are very much deeply embellished.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what those posts that we've seen, about this amount to is they're just upset that these things are happening in the movie. They're not necessarily being honest about how they are treated in the movie. It's not just because the girl character rebels and yells at her mom, that doesn't mean the movie is glorifying that this is a good thing. Yell at your mother. It's this is a genuine thing that happens between kids and parents. These are things that you have to both realize will happen and be ready for as an adult. And, you know, to expect a movie to not about this, about, you know, growing up, you know, especially into a more hormonal, you know, period of your life when you're not ready for these kind of emotions and reactions and all this to hit you. And that's, you know, guy or girl, when you're hitting puberty, your brain just starts to flip out because it doesn't know how to handle all this stuff. To expect that there's not going to be this new tension and this new, you know, anger, all this kind of just new adrenaline and emotions that you're trying to figure out, that's not going to bleed out into arguments and fighting and, you know, telling your mom that you like boys and loud music.
So I went into it wanting to have this positive outlook, right? Yeah. And immediately I'm hit with my own negativity, but not at all in terms of what all of those Facebook posts are about.
Right.
Like, just like my stance in Encanto with Abuela, I do not like the mom in Turning Red at all. The second that she walks in and finds, what is her name? Maylee? Is that?
I don't remember now.
How you pronounce it?
May. Just say May. Is
okay.
What it has here.
And she finds her notebook of her drawings and she rips the drawings out and goes to the gas station. And the whole time I'm like, this is a dream. This is a dream. This mom is not really doing this. This mom is not doing this to her daughter right now.
Drawings of a boy shirtless. Scandal.
Oh my gosh. Like, so of course, the entire movie I'm watching it like, you wretched woman. How dare you? You just destroyed your daughter. But then it really weighed in on me how there's an entire generation of parents who see puberty, who see the changes in our body, who see sex as so taboo. And it's like an area that they just are refusing to touch and discuss and have conversations about. And I just don't understand why. Coming from an educator's perspective, your kids are already hearing about it. And from an elementary educator perspective, as early as second grade, your kids are hearing about these things. They're having conversations with kids during lunch and at recess. And sure, they may not understand everything that they're saying and everything that they're talking about, but they're going to figure it out. Yeah. And they're going to figure it out really quick. And if you're not the one who's willing to talk to them about it, where are they going to get their answers from?
Right.
Yes.
If you can't, as a parent,
the whole crux of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can't, as a parent, swallow your, I don't know if it's pride or if it's just your uncomfortableness, your awkwardness, just for 10, 15 minutes, you know, to just sit your kids down and say, listen, your bodies are going to feel awkward feelings, and that's okay.
I really think part of it is that we're, like, our generation, maybe one generation above us, are kind of like the first generations where we're at that point of, okay, this is supposed to be something we talk about.
Right. Yeah.
And none of us really had that, or a lot of us didn't have that. And so
I feel like we don't know a lot of the knowledge either.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, you're sorry. My mic is cutting in and out, so I'm sorry if I talk over you. I'm sorry.
Do what you got to do.
Go for it.
Well, I was saying, like, all of the things from menstruation to sex, talking about porn, talking about, you know, having healthy boundaries, all of these things that they're going to encounter at various times in various places in various ways. Like, it's part of our job as parents to help equip them to go out into the world, whether you're homeschooling, whether you're public schooling, whether you just release them into the wild and hope for the best. I mean, whatever. Like, our job is to equip them. But like Matt said, I feel like our generation and above, we have not been equipped to have those discussions. You know, back in the day, we all had livestock and we know exactly how it happened. You know, we know how the next generation happens. We birth calves right on our own property or our neighbor's property. That's a normal thing. We know how it happens. Right. And we get a couple generations forward and we're like, oh, I thought I could only get pregnant by kissing because that's what my mom said. And I don't know how I got pregnant because I've never kissed my boyfriend, I promise. And it's like, well, you know what? Like, if your mom had felt equipped to have that conversation with you. Or if she, knew the facts, then it wouldn't have been an issue. That I feel like we don't have the permission from ourselves. The embarrassment is there, and we feel like we don't have the permission to have those tough contacts with our kids when they're young. Like Mo said, super young, just saying like, hey, this is what happens, and if anybody ever, shows you or touches you in this area, that's a private area and you need to come and talk to me, instead of, oh, we can't talk about that because, oh, that's private. I don't want to talk to my 5-year-old about that. You know, like, well, no, you need to, because you don't want to be the second or third person who talks to your 5-year-old about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we don't want to get to the point where we're shrouding this all in shame for another generation, because that's what happens in this movie. In this movie, after the drawing thing, you see May then like crying into a pillow, fighting with herself.
Yes.
Why were you drawing these horrible, sexy things? Like it's a a internal battle with, I must be terrible, I must be awful, I must be unworthy in one form or another. And that's exactly how, from a male perspective, that's exactly how we've treated like porn, and I don't want to use the M word, but the M word. Because that's something that my dad never talked to me about that. Nobody ever talked to me about that kind of stuff. I didn't even start hearing about, the dangers of that stuff until maybe youth group, which, I attended myself. Like, it wasn't something my parents were taking me to. And so that's not a common thing, I think, for most teenage boys to hear. Maybe a little bit more, at least from Christian households. But at the same time, it's more, that stuff's fine. That stuff's okay from the world. Even healthy. Like, that stuff's healthy. And so it's not even just you need to be made aware of these things, but it's that you need to now kind of go in a counterculture mode, explaining them, from a more faith-based perspective on how these can lead to more dangerous things, and how you have to keep that stuff in check as quickly as possible. I mean, all men and most women deal with that at some point at least, and for most of their lives, but to go into it without any kind of knowledge of, what that does to you spiritually, physically, mentally, how it trains your brain into, how you treat women and other people, how it completely screws up your idea of what a healthy sexual relationship is supposed to be like. All of that stuff is the unintended consequences of what seems relatively harmless, on its surface. And so I'm sure the exact same thing in different ways translates to, female growing up is, and probably many more untold ways than I can think of as a male. But to just not talk about it will send you into unless you're getting in trouble, let's put it that way. To not talk about it except to get yelled at when you're caught. That's what's just going to send you into shame. And unfortunately, shame is one of those things that needs a coping mechanism to get over. And what do you think the closest coping mechanism is to you? The exact same thing.
Yeah. And I feel like with the internet, it's even more nowadays. If kids hear a word and they don't know what it is, if you aren't established as their go-to, hey, I'm confused about something, they're going to look it up on the internet, and we all know that's a slippery slope for internet searches, come up with all sorts of things.
Yes.
And I mean, really, I really feel like we as a culture need to equip and empower parents to cross that bridge earlier and earlier with their kids, and just say like, hey, you know what? I'm learning how to be a parent for the first time with you, or I'm learning how to be a parent with 2 kids for the first time with you. And if I lose my temper, I'm sorry, but if you need to talk to me about something that you think will upset me, tell me, and I will try real hard to keep my temper, and just know that I'm learning how to handle it too. But I want to be here for you, and I don't ever want to embarrass you, but I want to be the person you come to with questions, and I promise I won't embarrass you. I promise I won't be teasing you about girls or, whatever, bring it up in front of your friends or be rude or whatever. But just like, I want to be that person for you. So if you hear this or you see this, come to me. It's like if you see a gun, we tell our kids, if you see a gun out at somebody's house, don't pick it up. Don't take it somewhere you think is safe. Come and tell me. Come and tell an adult. It's the same with any, they see porn. They see, something we try to not be too much, but make them aware of like, hey, if you see a friend displaying this kind of stuff and it concerns you, come to us, or if you see an adult in your life doing something like this. And it's really just, it all comes under empowering parents to be that person. And it's hard because I feel like I'm guessing most of the time and praying the other half of the time.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that's normal.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to, that's about our time here.
Mm-hmm.
But Tad, did you have anything else to add before we go?
Yes.
Tad? Yeah.
Yeah. One point that kind of was just spoken briefly about, but we can't disconnect any of these things with spiritual either.
Yeah.
All of these things, when we help develop the physical, the mental, the emotional, we are also developing the spiritual. So,
yes.
With this movie, I think it got a little too mystical, and so it's culturally accurate, but it is definitely one of those things that is also a good Christian talking point too. Like, yes, this is how their culture is raised, and this is what we believe in. So it really does encompass a lot of really good talking points. So yeah. Talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree with that. Mo, you got any final thing to say?
I mean, I have a lot of final things to say, but should I save my final things for our other days?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank y'all too so much for joining in. I think this was actually a very, very good and enlightening conversation.
I agree.
I think it hit all the notes I was hoping we were hit and a lot more I didn't even think of.
Yes. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Love you, Tad. Love you, Hillary.
You.
Love you guys.
We love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
That will do it for our Discord discussion on Turning Red. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about what Mo and I first saw about Turning Red on Facebook, which is a Christian review that went viral.
We'll be back with more. Stick around.
Welcome back to the Back Row. I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Mo. There's a lot going on in our Discord, backrowdiscord.com, where you get to chat after the show, share your own show ideas, keep up to date with our Twitch and YouTube, and be a part of our radio shows. And also see the behind-the-scenes workings of Back Row Games, including Sunday School Answers. Again, go to backrowdiscord.com to join.
This week, we're talking about Turning Red and some of the controversy around it.
So far, we've given our initial reviews and discussed with our Discord some of the controversial parts. And once again, we'll be a little bit spoilery. So if you don't want to hear about the movie at all, maybe skip the rest of the show and come back to the podcast later.
So the original prompting for us to cover Turning Red at all was when Mo read a viral review from a Christian mother. This review was largely negative, listing all the controversial stuff we've already talked about this week, and ending her review with this. She says, maybe none of this is a big deal to you and your family, and that's okay. No judgment here if you love the movie. I encourage you to watch it on your own if you have the time and make your own judgment. I was just caught very off guard while watching it and explaining all these things to my children in the moment and why we don't agree with them. If I had known what all this movie entailed, we would have just skipped it all together and enjoyed a different, lighthearted Disney movie. Now, I think that this parent kind of brought that on herself because you should do research on all the movies your kids watch, even the G-rated ones. My wife or myself watch all movies before we let our kids watch them. This started mainly to make sure that it wasn't too scary, but it's also about content. I watched Turning Red by myself. I don't think either of my boys need to watch it right now. And they might not be interested in watching this movie ever just because I'm not sure it would interest them. But that being said, I don't think that this lady was really intending to lead a huge charge to avoid the movie altogether. What really upset me was the number of people I saw reposting or retweeting and sharing this review or other negative reviews without ever watching the movie themselves. And it's become an issue within the Christian social media community at large, joining the bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
Is this like what was your initial thoughts when you read that review?
I mean, honestly, my initial thoughts were massive eye roll. Oh my gosh, here we go again. It's just one more thing. And then I was like, why Turning Red? Why? We didn't see any of this with Encanto.
Yeah. Moana. Moana had a lot of like demigods and all kinds of stuff.
I've been staring at
I
the
love
edge
Moana.
of the water.
The soundtrack. I didn't know Lin-Manuel Miranda did the soundtrack for that, but now I understand why I love that soundtrack so
Never
much.
really knowing why. Yeah. Listen, I haven't watched Moana in years.
I'm ready to watch
And
it.
that song is like my life. Anyway, but yes, that was my first initial thought. Like, why? Why Turning Red? And that only made me want to watch it more.
Yeah.
That's the rebellious side of me. I get it. Where, somebody says, don't do this. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to do so much of it.
Yeah. But that was my first thought.
Yeah. So we've seen this like shifting away from the Turning Red specifically. We've seen this happen quite a few times in Christian culture over the past several years, especially since the advent of social media becoming such a big thing with adults. Teenagers have largely abandoned Facebook.
Yeah.
It's become the uncool adult hangout where we all go and complain and rub ointment on each other.
Ew.
So let's talk about the first one that I really recall happening on the internet specifically, and that is that Red Cup incident. The guy who led the charge against Starbucks, not because Starbucks did anything specifically bad, but because they didn't do something that he thought they should.
Okay.
And that was, instead of making a bunch of fun Christmassy designs, which prior to this had never had anything to do with Jesus or anything, it was always just the generic Christmas stuff on it, mittens, snowmen, stuff like that. He was upset that they had decided to just do solid red cups with the little green Starbucks logo. And that's the red and green, and it's minimalist but tasteful, and it is different because they don't have red cups normally. So that's their big Christmas thing. And he was so mad that they didn't do designs for Christmas on it, that he went to Facebook, or I don't know if that's exactly the first place he posted it, but that's where the video ended up, and gave a long rant about how this was a affront to Jesus and to Christianity and to Christmas. And for some reason, a butt ton of Christians got behind this guy.
Yeah.
And agreed. And not only agreed to do something about it.
I know.
Which largely amounted to harassing people that didn't make this decision, that are working minimum wage at the counter, saying, go to Starbucks and say that your name is Merry Christmas. So they have to write Merry Christmas on the cup and decorate it. Why are you bugging the people that just want to make their money and go home? Like, that was my first thought. I did make a parody song about it. And that's one of the main points that I said in there is like, dude, I didn't make this decision. Why are you heckling me, man? I just want to make people coffee and go home. But there were so many Christians who were like, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to follow this guy like we're charging into hell with a water pistol. Just like, do you need a tissue?
I'm good.
Are you crying? Are you really sad?
My nose is running for some reason. I've just been sitting over here wiping my snotty nose on my shirt sleeve. It's no big deal. It's fine. We're good. Carry on.
So we had that. But prior to that, prior to social media, Christians have led very large bands, sometimes for very many years. So going backwards in time, we had the Harry Potter band.
Yes.
I remember being a youth grouper and watching a video about all the terrible things about the Harry Potter books. How, like, it's real witchcraft and how it'll bring you to... I have not met one person who's been like, I'm a Wiccan now. And it's all because of Harry Potter. And you haven't either. Am I right here?
You are
come on.
100% right.
It is a story that is wildly fantastical, way outside of reality, none of which is accurate.
Yeah.
And even if some of the quote-unquote spells in this story are based on some sort of weird Wiccan something or other, none of them are ever used to actually conjure up anything. The only one that anyone ever memorized is Leviosa and Avada Kedavra. And that's because those two are in the movie at a specific scene, and one of them's like the kill shot thing. That Avada Kedavra, Mo. Oh, she's still alive. Dang it. It doesn't work. Oh, goodness. So, I mean,
okay.
it's really silly.
Yeah, I agree.
And way overblown. And in reality, there is so much Christian undertones in the Harry Potter series. So much you can pull out of it for fantastic biblical allegories and things. I mean, just stop it. And I feel like this might be the one that's still clinging on to a lot of people. And I think it's largely because they haven't done their own research. Have you read one of the books or watched one of the movies and seen any real thing that's any different than Lord of the Rings or any of the other goofball fantasy movies out there? Just
Why do you call them goofball? They are all
because I hate fantasy stories.
Good grief.
But even longer than that was the Southern Baptist Church's Disney band.
My goodness, yes.
Which also was started for a ridiculous reason. Disney had what was known as a gay, it wasn't Gay Pride weekend because the gay pride as a term didn't exist, but it was essentially that. It was one weekend out of the year where they encouraged, homosexual people to come and, they did a, celebration thing there. And so people got really mad that existed, and they're like, we're going to boycott all Disney things until this weekend goes away. What they failed to mention to anybody who jumped on the bandwagon was that Disney also has a a faith-based weekend where they bring in Christian bands and I'm pretty sure they still do it and do all this stuff. It is a non-religious organization having some special weekends for some certain communities, of which you are one.
Right.
Why is that something ban-worthy? Why are you expecting a non-Christian corporation to act like a Christian corporation and then forcing them to follow your set of morality? You can't expect that. And of course they never caved. Who caved? We caved. Finally, after more than a decade, I think it was close to 2 decades. I don't remember. Actually.
Oh, there's still
it was a long time.
Still Christians walking around giving other Christians a hard time for watching Disney movies.
And again, I don't have a problem with any of this if it's your personal decision based on research you've done.
Absolutely.
The problem we have is the bandwagon mentality. All these Christians are banning it for X, Y, Z. Well, that's all the information I need. I'm jumping in. The oldest one that I can recall, which started, I think, before we were born or maybe early on in our lives, was the D&D ban, the Dungeons and Dragons ban. You can still find the Chick Track out there being printed regularly about Dungeons and Dragons and how it leads to demons and torture in your life. Dungeons and Dragons is no different in tone or scope than Lord of the Rings or Narnia or anything like that. It's ogres, it's dwarves, it's, people fighting dragons and, going into dungeons. It's a storytelling thing. It's basically a fantasy movie or book that you're writing yourself as you go along in game format.
Can I just throw this out there because I remember the D&D ban.
Yeah.
My parents were youth leaders when I was between the ages of 9 and 12. And I can remember my dad having the youth boys over for game days. This is back when you had to bring your entire computer.
Right. You had to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
LAN party.
Yeah. And so our entire dining room table was covered in computer monitors and CPUs. And they just did this huge game style playing Doom.
Yeah.
And Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
But they were not allowed to play D&D. And I can remember being about 10 years old going, what the heck?
Right.
Like, this
is full of actual demons.
Yeah. This makes no sense. I
guess you are killing the demons, but still.
Even then, the dots did not align.
Yeah.
Things did not connect because it was that whole mentality of, well, we've been told this is specifically against our beliefs and what we should be aligning ourselves with, but we haven't heard anything about this, so you're okay to continue. Instead of doing the research for yourself, like you've said, instead of watching the movie or playing the game or actually learning what it's about, you can't just jump on what someone else says.
Right.
Kiss, which, okay, fine. But AC/DC, Metallica. Yeah.
Kiss brought it on themselves with their initials.
Their initials. But still, that they were all like, I can remember them being one, those three bands kind of being in the same vein. I was not allowed, absolutely not. I was going to go straight to you know where if I listened to any song by them. Recently, it was Target.
What was wrong with Target?
Their bathrooms.
Oh, right. They were doing Yeah. I remember that.
And then the whole big, huge laundry list of companies who support homosexual rights and whatnot, that we should be banning that, like Pepsi and Coke and...
What's funny is half of those companies don't actually really, they just want to make a bunch of sales based on their products and
But instead of Christians taking a rational perspective, it's easier to just jump alongside what everyone else is saying and say, yeah, you're right. We have to ban them. We absolutely cannot stand with what they stand for.
I remember in youth group, we had a guy come in, like our youth pastor brought in a guy. I think he went to our church at one point at that time, but he wasn't going then. But he called himself knowledgeable in a lot of things regarding the Church of Satan. And he brought this laundry list of companies that regularly donate to the Church of Satan. And I'm like, I don't think this sounds credible. and to this day, nothing of what he said has been corroborated. Because, you have to make your donations public.
Right.
This would be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Why would it just be the companies that donate to a homosexual pride, whatever? But we wouldn't have a big list of these are the donors of the Church of Satan. I remember it was GNC was one of them. I'm like, why? Why would the vitamin shop places care a lick?
Because if you're taking vitamins, then you clearly have a problem with vanity.
You clearly aren't happy with the way God made you.
Listen.
Vitamin B, as in Bible, is the only vitamin I need.
The B-I-B-L-E.
The only
That's
vitamin.
The vitamin for me.
The only vitamin a Christian needs is B1.
Oh my goodness. We laugh and we joke and we poke fun, but yes, those were things that I can remember hearing. As I just told our group of boys who stayed at our house over the weekend for D-Now. One of the questions that we had was, how can you remain in awe of God? And I told them, I can remember being around their age when the first time that I had a Christian elderly person come up to me and give me a hard time about something that I was choosing to say. And I had just made mention that I thought something was awesome. And it was something super...
I had the same thing happen to me. I know what you're going to say.
God is the only true awesome thing.
You can only be in awe of God. Do you know what word awesome means?
You cannot just throw that word around. And I remember at that point in my life going, this church has lost their mind. It's full of a bunch of crazies.
But the thing that you said that really, really, hits the nail on the head is that, it didn't make sense that this one thing was banned, but this other thing was not, despite they had very similar themes. And that's the same thing, like I mentioned with Lord of the Rings, as opposed to any other fantasy thing. They're almost identical. To any other thing that's come out, yet Lord of the Rings is the only one that tends to get a pass, or Narnia. Those two, the only ones that tend to get a pass, only because people know that it is a Christian allegory. But just because somebody put that into the story, and Lord of the Rings is not as apparent about it as Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe is, of course. But just because those are put in doesn't mean that's what everyone's taking out of it. And just because someone doesn't put that thing in specifically in other things doesn't mean you can't pull those kind of things out of it. Most stories tell a very similar parallel to a salvation Jesus character, the Matrix, all these things. The one is what you're looking for, the one that's going to save us all, the savior. These kind of things are very common themes in movies and books and series and games and all kinds of things. And so what it comes down to is Christians as a whole need to stop jumping on a bandwagon, stop retweeting and reposting things that they haven't researched themselves, and instead do your own research, come to your own conclusions. If you need to share those conclusions with somebody, do it privately. Don't start rolling a small snowball down the hill to become a giant crushing boulder of snow. There's no reason to stir the pot in that way. And thus create these weird banning bandwagons. So, that being said, if everything you've heard us talk about with Turning Red this week has made you weary, especially yesterday, we talked about some of the controversial stuff. If it's made you weary of letting your kids watch it, as we said, watch it yourself first. It's okay to get other people's reviews. It's okay to go to Common Sense Media, which actually is relatively okay with the movie. It's okay to check out all these different places. But in the end, you won't really know how you're supposed to think about this until you experience it. It's the same thing with music. It's the same thing with movies. It's the same thing with books. It's the same thing with video games. It's the same thing as anything else that you as a parent should be aware of in your child's life. Yes, it takes some time. Yes, it takes some extra effort, but it's part of parenting. Now, I'm not saying by far, just let your kid run wild and do whatever they want. That's not what I'm saying. Or take in anything that they want, experience anything that they want. That's not what I'm saying. They're probably going to make some mistakes. And that's a whole different rabbit trail we can go down one day. But in the end, it is your job to be knowledgeable, not at a baseline based on other people's experiences, but based on yours.
Agreed.
All right. Switching gears, tomorrow, Mo and I are going to talk about our own struggles with that first big coming of age moment.
We'll be back with more. Stick around.
Welcome back to the back row. I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Mo. And Matt and I have been doing this for years, quickly approaching our 500th morning show. You can catch roughly the last 150 episodes in the podcast feed, but you can do a deeper dive into our archives and catch nearly every single episode ever in our Discord. Join us at backrowdiscord.com and visit our podcast archives channel.
You can do a deeper dig into our Discord
you can
archive.
Yep, do it all.
This week, we're talking about Turning Red and some of the controversy around it.
So far, we've given our initial reviews and discussed with our Discord some of the controversial parts. And we talked about the bad Christian habit of jumping on a banning bandwagon with very little personal research. But today, we're going to go back to the movie's topic and talk about that special time in every young person's lives. Puberty.
So, of course, the whole movie is kind of an allegory for puberty / girls getting their period, if we're going to take it a little bit more fine-tuned. But in all, it's really about kind of a coming-of-age thing. So did you feel that this movie represented this for you as an official 100% certified lady-type person?
In a lot of ways, yes. Yes. Even... from the very beginning of the movie, when she's drawing the images in her journal, and she just finds herself out of nowhere, like thinking these thoughts and feeling these emotions, and then knowing instantly that they're not, I don't want to say not good, but that she shouldn't be having these. But
they're
thoughts.
they're coming from a lustful place.
Yes, and then wanting to hide it, and then that whole battle, that internal battle of, you can't feel these things. You have to make your mom proud. You have to make good choices. I would say about 98% of it nailed it on the head for me personally at that time in my life.
I think that's even for parents who are comfortable talking about the like body changing aspect of puberty with their kids. I think that's one of the things that we still kind of omit, is that the fact that a lot of puberty revolves around the fact that we're starting to feel like sexuality, like emotions and feelings and lust, and we're noticing body parts and things on other people that we don't understand why we like. Suddenly. And
just kind of seemingly out of nowhere.
Right. And that was very confusing for me as a kid. Like, my parents never talked to me about any of that stuff, didn't prepare me for what was happening. And so I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is that suddenly I was very interested in what stars had playing late at night when my parents were asleep.
Yep.
And then, of course, this was the time when the personal family computer, the home computer, started becoming a common thing. And so we eventually got our own computer in the living room there. They connected to the internet. Back in the old days where connected to the internet sounded like, that kind of thing. Took forever, and you couldn't use the telephone while you were on the internet.
Yep.
And I was left home a lot, alone during this time. And so puberty for me actually went hand in hand with discovering pornography, which was a terrible way to experience puberty. I'm just going to say, like, it messed me up, not understanding what was going on and growing into this. And like, it became almost a dependent part of me from just the first rumblings of, starting that process. And I also learned really quickly how to hide that fact. And so I only ever got caught looking at that stuff one time and did a fine job explaining it away. And it was like one of the biggest addictions I ever had for like 13 years of my life. Like it was a huge problem. And a lot, especially boys, I know there's quite a few women who also go through that struggle, but I feel like the majority of boys struggle with that on one level or another. There have been several studies done that have found like, it's 100% of boys look at this stuff. Like there's no escaping seeing it. And this whole episode's not about pornography, I promise. I know it makes people uncomfortable, but that was my experience, early on. And so I learned everything about my changing body and, lustful feelings and all this the very wrong way, the very flipped opposite of reality, opposite of what God intended kind of way. And it would take me many years to kind of unlearn all those things. And I feel like, I don't know for sure, but I feel like if my dad had sat me down one day, when I was 11 or 12 and talked to me about some of this stuff, prepared me a little bit for what was going to happen and what I'd be attracted to and what is healthy and what's not, feel like I might have been able to shorten that struggle a little bit. Yeah. Or at least had the knowledge behind it to know it was going to get worse if I didn't do something about it.
Yeah. I think the struggle is predominantly a male struggle, simply because boys feel this, or men feel this responsibility in knowing and understanding that one day I'm going to have a relationship with a woman and it's going to be my job to pursue her.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you don't have these conversations with your parents. And so you kind of take it into your own hands as, okay, well, how does this actually work? Really?
I didn't say anything.
So you begin to look into what truly is your responsibility, if you will, quote unquote.
And and that extends to, I feel like a lot of men think that if you don't watch this stuff and learn from it, you're not going to know what to do.
Right.
When you get to have intercourse for the first time.
Yeah.
You think that all this is real life and none of it's real life.
Right.
But unfortunately, I feel like maybe that's starting to shift because so many people are growing up experiencing that, men and women, as what they think sex is, that a lot of people are treating that as, yes, this is what this is. And it's completely devoid of any actual commitment.
Yeah.
It's just weird taboo things. How many weird taboo things can we do in one night? Yeah. And that's dangerous as well. And a lot of that is coming from the fact that, and I mentioned this, I think, on Tuesday, a lot of it's coming from the fact that there are more and more people now who are saying that this is fine. Yeah. Even good, healthy. Yeah. We're giving a lot of praise to things that are not praiseworthy. And honestly, it breaks my heart to say, but I know coming from a parent's perspective, having these conversations is hard. It is difficult. It is awkward. I'm not looking forward to it at all. I can remember being about 14 years old, and that was when I had my first serious boyfriend. And my mom, it was actually a secret. My mom knew that I had a boyfriend. My dad was completely against it and not at all condoning the way that this all played out, but it was reality. It's how it happened. And so I had confided in my mom about this boyfriend and how serious I thought that we were. And she told me one day, Megan, if it ever gets to the point to where you are sexually serious, you need to let me know so that we can do something about it. And that was the first time that I can remember hearing my mom say that word in front of me. And I was like, this is weird. No, thank you. Yeah. And while I know that she was just doing her very best at what she thought as a mom she needed to do to protect me, I made a commitment very early with our kids that I was going to set a different standard. And I was going to let them know, listen, what I want for you is for you to remain pure. And there's going to be temptations. There's going to be things that you feel. And all of those things are okay. Those are good things. They are natural things, but they have to be contained until the time is right. And so having those difficult conversations with your kids, and not just once, but you got to have them a lot. And you just kind of got to keep reminding them of those standards, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of in all of these feelings. Yeah. In all of the changes, it's not something that's shameful, but it is something that has to be contained until the time is right. My least favorite part was when the mom, and I said this, I think, when the mom ripped out the pages from
May's journal and just completely humiliated her in front of a number of people.
Yeah.
But also that shame, that inner shame that May was already feeling, that just validated that.
Yeah.
You know, instead of kind of going, okay, we're here. Hold on. We got to have a conversation. Let's sit down, you know. Instead of, it was okay for the mom to freak out a little, but let's not shame our children and let's not humiliate them, especially for things that are natural, things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the really dangerous part is, as parents, it's our job to protect them. And sometimes that even means protecting them from ourselves and from our own feelings. So
you're absolutely right. And when it comes to this, we talked about this a little on Tuesday, but when we come to this, we know that for our generation who are parents now, and maybe the generation before us, a lot of us didn't have the correct kind of talk, you know, from our parents, because our parents had never had it and they didn't know what to do. And it was only becoming kind of an idea of, you need to sit down and talk to this stuff, talk to them about this stuff. So it is our responsibility now, especially if you didn't have that, to be better, to do this better, to sit down and break this cycle of silence when it comes to these kind of uncomfortable topics. And you're not going to know how to do that right off the bat. Definitely don't go in blind. Talk to some people that have done it. Find some books out there. I don't know a specific girl-centric one, but I know that Every Man's Challenge, which is part of the Every Man's Battle series, that one is specifically about, I think it's that one, Every Man's Challenge. It's either Every Man's Challenge or Every Man God's Man, but one of those two is specifically about how to talk to your kids about, you know, puberty and lust and pornography and all those kind of things before it becomes a habit in their lives already. And spoiler alert, it's going to happen a lot younger than you were even.
yeah.
It's this change, and I'm not sure science is completely understanding of why, but these puberty changes tend to be happening younger and younger now. Not just the awareness of sex and things of that nature, but the actual bodily changes are starting to happen younger and younger. And so probably have these discussions a couple of years before you think you need to, because otherwise you might just completely miss it.
Yeah.
And you're 2 years late jumping in trying to fix things that have already been set in place in their mind.
And don't let it freak you out.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't let it intimidate you. Don't let it scare you. I think the best piece of advice that I can give, walking through this twice already, continuing to walk through it, is to pray. And as silly as some people may think that sounds, okay, Mo, we're just going to pray. No, pray going into the conversations.
Yeah.
You know, because believe me when I say God will work through you. God will guide those conversations. God will guide the heart of your children to be able to receive and hear the things that they need to hear in order to protect them long term.
Yeah.
So,
well, that ends our discussion this week on Turning Red and its controversy, but we want to know what you think. What did you think of the movie? Is this a movie your family is avoiding? Come share your thoughts in our Discord at backrowdiscord.com in the Respond to Show channel. Message us on any of the socials at the Backrow LTN, or leave us a voicemail at 575-562-8052. And that's going to do it for the Back Row Morning Show.
we hope you enjoyed our discussions and hope you'll join us again next week.
Remember that we air our full morning shows first exclusively on LTN Radio, LTNOnAir.com every Monday through Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern with an encore at 10 a.m. But if you miss a day or just can't catch the show live, you can find our 4 full shows and our weekly main podcast by searching The Back Row Morning Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the podcast apps. Subscribe, rate 5 stars, and leave a review just because you're nice.
Check out lovethynerd.com. It is positively jam-packed with articles, podcasts, and videos that cover a wide range of nerdy topics. And just like any ministry, we are largely supported by those willing to partner with us financially.
And as one of the newest staff members of LTN and a part-time nerd culture missionary, I am looking to build my support team to help this radio station grow and help my family financially as I pour more focus into all I get to do for LTN. So for more information, you can visit lovethynerd.com/radiomat. Or you can just reach out to me directly. Love Thy Nerd is a qualifying 501c3 nonprofit organization, and your gift is tax deductible.
And make sure you're following us on all the socials. We're on the book, the twit, the gram, and the talk. Just search for @TheBackRowLTN and connect with us.
Once again, I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Mo.
And if nobody else tells you, we promise that it's true.
Jesus loves you, nerd.